I was just responding. And then eventually he says, well, I need you to see the MD. I didn't even know what the long form of MD was. I'm like, okay, I need to see an MD. And I'm like, okay, I didn't even know what MD. I'm like, what is an MD? Of course, I didn't ask. I'm just like, okay, I need to see somebody called MD. And so he took me to, I think it was at the 12th floor.
Yeah.
And his name was, I don't remember his name, but he was an MD that was very much feared at the time. And he asked me a bunch of questions. He asked me a bunch of questions connected to the work, and I responded them in the best way I knew how. So he asked me he showed me some photos, and he told me what I would, and I came to realize later that those photos were ads. And he said, what would you write to accompany this? And I said, so I'm like, oh, this could be this, and this could be that. And I was just having a conversation. And then he said, come on Monday, you're hired.
Oh, now I know.
Come on. It's like, do you speak Swahili? I'm like, yeah, I speak Swahili. My Swahili was terrible, but I said I speak Swahili. But I was honest. I was like, I speak streets. I can speak Swahili to get through my life in the streets, but corporate Swahili, not necessarily. But I can learn. etc. He's like, come on Monday. He said come on Friday. So I came to see the creative director at the time, and he asked me a question every young person should not be asked, especially if it's the first, like, how much do you want to get paid? Wait,
you have never been paid before.
Never. Trust me, I was working for my mom. What is she paying you for? What? She's giving you food on the table.
And the roof on top of your goods.
Right. And I don't remember what I said, but I should have said more. That's all I know.
But they give you what you
They
said.
gave me what I asked for, but of course their budget was a lot higher than what I asked for.
Oh my goodness. People are so unkind in this world.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Anyway, did you get the experience? Was it worth it in terms of experience?
It was great in terms of experience. I got in, I did the job in a month and a half. I think I was, what do you call it when I was...
Promoted?
Promoted, yes. Yeah. I was promoted to account executive for those adverts. And then I had to leave for uni. I remember telling the general manager at that time that I'm leaving, and he thought I was leaving to go to another agency. And I kept saying, no, I'm going to uni. I'm going to uni, because many of them could not believe that I had not gone through university. And I said, yes, me guy, I only have a Form 6 education. I don't have a degree.
You were surprised?
Yes, several were.
Wow.
Shock on you.
Yeah.
And I remember they offered me a different position. They offered me an account manager position.
So that you don't go to uni?
Yeah, so that I don't leave. I don't think they believed I was going to uni. Not at all. He didn't believe whatsoever.
But did they improve your pay after proving yourself?
They wanted to. No, after going to uni, no, I didn't come back there.
But your pay was what you asked throughout the year?
No. When I got promoted to account executive, my pay also increased.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And as every stupid child, my spending also increased. Terrible.
I have no comment. So you go to uni in Malaysia.
Listen, I was 18.
What did you buy at 18?
I think I was helping a lot with the expenses at home.
That's nice.
Yeah, and I decided not to take a bus anymore. I was taking a taxi.
That's also nice. Yeah, sometimes we beat ourselves for treating ourselves good and showing some gratitude to people who actually sacrifice everything for us.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
I don't mind that first part, but I can't remember what I did with them. I'm pretty sure I bought a lot of clothes. I used to be a shopaholic.
Yeah.
Because me, I'm growing up in impoverished. I don't have luxury of these clothes, and now I have the money. Of course, I was shopping. God, I was shopping. Anyway.
What else would you have done now that you know?
So I'm very big in investing. I would have probably bought CRDB shares. I definitely would have done that.
Okay. Not bought a plot or something?
I would have bought the CRDB shares. I'd start there. And then I would have thought about buying a plot. 100%. So those two things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone makes mistakes.
Anyway.
So you go to Malaysia, right?
Right.
And this is a new country. I think Malaysia is a most first world country, right?
It's a developing country.
It's a developing country.
Yes.
So what is that experience for you?
Well, I'm just going to say I didn't eat food for a month. I'm not adventurous with, like with you, the pweza soup. I would never. My palate is not refined. It's a lost cause. It's a lost cause.
Yeah.
So I remember eating cornflakes for an entire month because I would not dare experiment with new foods. But all in all, it was a great experience. And the great things about it, I guess, was, listen, I'm coming from very different from many of the students in my class. I've come from real life experience. I've worked in an agency, and my course was mass communication, specializing in advertising.
Yeah.
And then there was an aspect of marketing there.
Yeah.
But I've had this real life experience, and so with the concepts that they're teaching in uni, I'm in my mind. I already know how to apply them on ground. I can also say that I guess, considering I was coming from this agency experience, I was coming with it into university, I'd say that I was also very much, I think there was a lot of pride involved. Because you're coming, it's not even the cup full. My cup was half empty. It was half full. And so everything they were putting in, there was a lot of, and I have the words to explain it now. I didn't have it then. There was a lot of context mismatch because the context they were using to teach and how they were approaching even marketing strategies is very different from how you'd approach it here, right? So some strategies worked for there. So even as the professors, the lecturers were marking, I would approach an assignment thinking about my experience in TZ, where I'm like, if we're launching something, this is how we would go about it, right? And this is what would need to happen for a campaign to be effective. Whereas on that end, that's not effective. That's a waste of money. That's how, and I'm like, well, the costs of running a campaign here and there are also very different.
Yeah.
But either way, so again, now I have the words for it. Back then I didn't. But there was a lot of learning as well. As always, I found solace in books. I didn't go out much. I had a very, very handful group of friends. I think that's what I can say about that.
So in Malaysia, just to get the context, is it like if you are a university student,
right?
Is there like a party life, nightlife?
What guy? Which country doesn't have party life for university students? Which one? Tell me. Which one?
So you have to choose not to participate in that.
Listen, let's be honest. Listen, for even my kids, if you come to watch this later, Thursday evening, I'm thinking of my outfit for Friday.
When in university?
Hey, guy, I'm in class. The moment the last lesson is out, I'm thinking, okay, so what are we doing tomorrow? Where are we going? I can already hear the music, guy. I can already hear it. I'm already bouncing. I'm already there. Friday was always the night out kind of day. I never drank, by the way, at all. I was not a drinker. And this, no drinking, no smoking, but I love music. Music does things to me, right? So it was always the dancing part that I used to gravitate towards. And that was about my party life. I'd go out dancing, and that would be once a week, sporadically here and there, but not necessarily every single week. And I'd say university is where I learned to procrastinate.
Oh, okay. That's another discussion we should have, because I think we have ever had this like twice since I knew you.
Right?
Once it was lengthy discussion, and I think most people struggle with this. But also smart people are the greatest of procrastinators. Procrastinators, eh?
Terrible.
Yeah. So, did you really get maximum out of Malaysia University?
Man, I'd say I could have gotten more out of it. You know why? Even procrastination, where it started, was the moment we had an assignment, I'd do it immediately. Like we had a deadline 3 weeks, 3 weeks away. I'd be done. I'd be done now, right? And then I came to figure out that I could do an assignment in a day, or in like an assignment that other people would spend 2 weeks on. I could do it in like 8 hours. And so I'm like, okay, let's just wait for the last minute. And hence the procrastination came. And then I'm also going to blame my procrastination on viruses, because I remember there's a time I did all my assignments on my laptop and then it crashed and I had to do them all over again.
Oh, you mean the computer viruses?
The computer viruses, yes. And my laptop crashed and I had to do them all over again. I did assignments that I did in 2 weeks in 1 day. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, I can actually do this in a day. So I'm like, so why did I spend 2 weeks? So of course my mind, silly me, I went to, I can do this in a day. So every time I had assignment, I'm like, well, I'll just wait.
You wait for what?
For that one day. So terrible. But all in all, you asked about the university experience. I think it was beautiful exposure. It was beautiful exposure to see how much some universities put into the courses that they expose students to. So when you're learning, so for example, marketing, I'd say one course in marketing, you'd find that the professor is actually an expert. They've worked at an agency or they own an agency. So they're giving you real life examples. Of course, like I said, context was quite varied, but I appreciate that. Or you'd find that, a lecturer teaching you, advanced science of human behavior. So we had such courses. If you're learning communications, you have to learn human behavior. And they're actually an expert in the field. They publish works in the field. It's not theory. That's
practical experience.
Practical experience. I came to really appreciate that. The fact that people who are in front of students teaching must have practical experience. That way, when the Khalila in high school gets to ask you a question and you're not sure what it is, you can still respond and you're not intimidated by questions that are coming from left, right, and center, because you have this real life experience to back up your theory.
That's nice, way of looking at it. And also, given your previous experience, at least for sure, you got a different perspective in education, right? And did you get any receipt, or did you graduate just on time at this point?
I graduated with a child. I'm going to say that.
From Malaysia?
Not from Malaysia, Tanzanian. But I had my child when I was in my last year of uni, but I graduated on time.
Okay. That's not bad.
Graduated on time. I remember that the professors were like, oh, you have to stop now. You're expecting. You can't go to class. I'm like, hey, watch me. Me. I have been brought out to study. I shall study. So, Michael, literally, I used to push my child, my son, he's now 14. I used to push his pram into the class, and I used to carry him in the classes. So I'd bembeleza him, so I'd sit and literally cradle him in the back of the class, and I'd be taking notes, and I'd change his diaper in the toilets, literally go to the toilet, put him on my lap and change it. And every time we had exams, I'd literally nurse him. I said 1, 2, 3, 1 happened, that does not equal to 2. The way I respond to this, it was terribly difficult. But I made sure I finished, and I finished well. I'm grateful.
That part I didn't know about it. Now that I know about it, I think I see also something else about you that I didn't know where that drive comes from. Now I see. So you graduate, and now do you come back straight here, or do you find opportunities elsewhere? So
the story is a little bit. The stories, Michael, you're getting into every. With this podcast, people just ask like really high level questions, and I give them high level answers. I feel like you're digging.
Yeah, the thing is here, Kellz, you see, high level questions have a problem, and those are the people. So the thing here, and I want you to understand me. Here you're free. If you're not comfortable answering the question, we can just skip it.
No, I don't mind answering.
But the thing is, I've watched so many people, high level, medium level, whatever level. But I tend not to put one and one together. But for your story, or for any Impact Masters or Africa Talking Retold stories, you get to understand the whole context. To some extent, you might listen to that story and understand why actually those people think that way, made that decision.
Yeah.
And we'll get to the impacts that you've created, and you see, and anyone who is listening will see how actually most of these drove you to building this.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't worry about... Yeah,
no, I'm not. I'm just like, you're the first person to ask me these questions. And so I'm like, oh, okay. Here we go.
Yeah. But for sure, even for me, I'm learning a lot from you. Though we have ever had several conversations that are really deeper than these, I'm still also now getting some other context of like, oh, this is it. This actually contributes to what Kellz is right now. Yeah. So did you just come back here to Da, or did you go elsewhere?
You did not forget your question, did you?
Do I need to?
So I was to graduate in 2010. In May of 2010. But that year, I had to come back home. So my final course was I finished in March of 2010. But something happened in our home. Yeah. Again, single parent home, my mom. Something happened, so she disappeared. And I had to come back home and take care of the family. So I had to go from uni to breadwinner. And so I had to cut short. So I started with a diploma in advanced mass communication. Yeah. And then I got a scholarship to finalize a degree. I couldn't finish the degree because I had to come back home to take care of the family. Yeah. And so I came back home in September of 2010. And the reason I did not attend my graduation. I couldn't afford it. I had a debt in Cho because I was paying some of my tuition fee. I was paying as I went along. Yeah. And so my mom disappeared. I had to come back home. Coming back home, I thought I'd be here for 3 months. And then I would get to go back to uni and go on with my dreams. Yeah. No, listen, you try to tell your dreams, put them in a box, cover them, nice board, find shelves. Yeah. The back of the shelf, put it there, cover, do not look. That was the situation. Yeah. So I had to completely forget what I wanted to do and come here and take on the responsibility of taking care of the family. So I had a brother, a young sister who was also going through high school at that time. She went to IST. And for those who would listen to IST is a very expensive, it's the most expensive school in TZ. But we had an arrangement so most of the fees were taken care of by her father at the time. We shared a mom. And the school itself had an arrangement that would take care of some of these fees, and so we're taking care of kind of like the transportation fees, books, and basically upkeep, which in itself was not small. Exam fees were not small. Yeah. For those who have ever applied to college in the United States, every single university, the application fee is not small. It's not small. Yeah. So it was things like that. I had to come back to find a house to move my family to, because the place that my mom used to rent, we had to move. There was just drama. You come back, guys, there was drama.
At home?
Guys, there was drama.
So your mom did not just disappear because
me and you should do it. I feel like there's a movie here. Oh. I'm getting like a moment, a tube light. We should do it. Yeah. Hey.
Maybe I used also to be a playwright, so we can combine your writing skill with my playwright skill.
Absolutely. So I came back. My mom did. There were suspicious circumstances, but not saying more into that. But it was. I was 22. One-ish, two-ish. But coming into a space where suddenly you have to take on all the responsibilities of a home, it's a lot. Yeah. And nobody's asking you about what you need, where you are, what your dreams are, what you want to do. Basically, you are nothing. Yeah. Everybody else matters. Nobody's asking you about how you are. And I remember moving into a space of deep, deep depression. But you can't. At that age, you can't show anybody depression. You're just supposed to move. I was suicidal, completely. Yeah. But the thing that took me through was faith. Yeah. Faith in God. I cannot. It was God and nothing else. You know, I have stories for days. This podcast is not long enough for us to go through everything, but I'm grateful for that season. We went from house to house. We knew homelessness. Guys, homelessness.
How many were you in your family?
So I've got a young sister. I've got an older brother. But then in the house, there was also a lady who my mom was taking care of with her 2 children. They were also there. And so when we moved, I moved with all of them. And remember, there was my son as well. He was 1 and something at this time. And so we moved to a different house. In that, I'm just gonna go through a string of events in that time. So there was having to move from one house to the other. There was being chased away from that one other house that we moved into because the landlord did not love the fact that I couldn't afford expensive furniture. And I bought mattresses and put them on the floor because the family needs somewhere to sleep. So I could not afford like the beautiful. There was not there's luxury, and then there was that level like medium, and then there's the level at the bottom there. That's what. But I'm like, people can sleep. They can. That's what I could do at the time, right? And then we got chased out of that house because he didn't like the way we were living. And then I found another house that was that was affordable, but it was great for the family. But we paid the rent. I paid the rent for this house only to find out that the landlady was a fraud. So hela zikaibiwa. So the night when I have to move, the evening that I have to move my family from one house to the other, you come to find out that there's no the other. There's no house. And then in this house that we're supposed to move from, the landlady, who was a church deacon, was found people to come into the house and throw our things out. Threw things out, and she was saying, "Oh, I'm going to publish you in the papers. I'm going to literally leave my house. You poor girl. I don't want poor people living in my house." Seriously. And so thank God there's a friend of mine who had another friend who lived in Sinza. So they had like a house, like, you know, as if nyumba za from Sydney, like 50K houses, which is about what, like $20 per month. And then that other friend, our mutual friend, had traveled. So his house was vacant for about 3 months. So I got to move the dada and her 2 sons and my son there and myself. I had to ask my brother to find ways to take care of himself. My young sister, I moved her to my aunt's house. I had to ask my mom's young sister to take care of her. And then another friend of ours, his mom's house had an empty room. So we moved all the furniture there. And so we went to this place in Sinza and we had like clothes in our suitcase and we had to start there. And it was, I don't know how I was not depressed. It was chaos. And then moving from that, eventually managed to get some money together, moved from that house in Sinza to a house in Mikocheni. Moved the family there. Again, we were sleeping on the floor still, but this guy didn't care.
Which guy?
The new landlord. So this is another house. Moved there. And then in this new house that we were in Mikocheni, my son got hit by our neighbor. So he had an accident. He had a near-death experience. So our neighbor was driving into the driveway, and she was on her phone. So she hits my son. So she hits him on the right side, and then he falls on his left. He's just learning to walk, so he's about a year and a few months. He falls on his left side, and then she doesn't realize that she's hit him. So she grazes him.
What?
She moves him along it's like cobble bricks to fit on the driveway. And so what ended up happening, I remember I was at home that afternoon. Then I'd gone to choir practice or band practice because I used to serve in the choir in my former church. And I got called so the dada was calling me, "Where are you? Come back home." And I said, "Listen, you never call me this way. What happened?" And she's like, "Just come back home." I'm like, "What happened?" "Just come back home." I'm like, "Okay, did somebody," because we were on the first floor, "Did somebody fall from the first floor?" "No." "Is the house on fire?" "No." "Is somebody dead?" "No." I'm like, "Okay, what happened?" "Somebody knocked Pharrell." That's my son's name, firstborn's name.
Yeah.
Where are you? We're at TMJ. Rush to TMJ.
TMJ is an hospital?
It's a hospital not very far from here. Rush to the hospital. Now my son, literally, the entire left side of his face was gone.
Paralyzed or?
Skin.
Oh.
So it was grazed on the cobble brick driveway. There was no hair. Literally, his skin was scraped off.
That was bad.
I was, and of course everybody's it's like, oh, Jikaze, hold yourself, be strong. Listen, I was just from choir practice, but the words that came out of my mouth were not holy. I'm like, shut up. Do not tell me to calm down. Look at what you've done. And so even as I'm walking into the hospital, by the way, there's literally blood dripping, right? And my son, the moment he sees me, he reaches out his hand and he's crying, and they've got this massive gauze on his left side of his face. They've injected him with different chemicals, of course, meds. And I ask, and they're like, oh, we've done an x-ray, he's fine. Michael, long story short, we came to find out that he had a fractured liver, he had bruised ribs, and he had a fractured left shoulder. We found out 2 days later because the hospital, nothing on the hospital, but the hospitals, and it was not just one. We had visited at the time. My neighbor at the time did not want, the one who hit him, by the way, did not want to invest. She said she was not going to pay for expensive hospitals. The only hospital with a CT scan, working CT scan at that moment was Aga Khan Hospital.
Yeah.
And I said, eventually, after taking my son back and forth to the hospital so many times, only to be told by nurses that I was too anxious as a mom, that I was looking too much into it. And I can say this in Swahili. It's like, wamama siku hizi hamjui jinsi ya kunini, hamjui jinsi ya kulea. So moms of nowadays, you're too anxious. You don't know how to take care of children. You don't know how to nurture your children. You're panicking for nothing. Your child is fine. The child has a temperature of 40 degrees. He's throwing up blood, Michael. He's throwing up blood. He can't eat. His stomach is bloating. There's something wrong. And I kept going back to the hospitals. There's something wrong, only to be laughed at and to be chased out.
That is Aga Khan?
This is not Aga Khan. This was another 2 hospitals. I won't even go into it.
Yeah.
But eventually, one of the evenings, so a night after he had the accident, he was doing terribly. And my son is whimpering on the bed and he's just saying, mommy, mommy. And I'm like, this is enough. And I went, I think this was the 5th hospital visit I'd done in that day. Yeah. The 4th I'd been laughed at, I'd been by nurses. I'd watched nurses scrape my son's skin off his face, saying that, because when they put medicine, pus builds up.
Yeah.
And what they said, they were removing the pus, are saying if they don't remove it, it's going to cause the wound to get infected. They had not given him an anesthetic at all. There was no painkiller. They would scrape it off. And what one of the nurses told me is, if he's not crying, if we don't hear him cry, we won't know if it's working. They were holding him down doing this. No adult would agree to this nonsense. And every time I kept holding them, I'm like, don't do it. Give him something. And they would laugh and they would talk amongst themselves. Mothers of nowadays, you have no backbone. And they were telling stories about their good old times, right? Anyway, so eventually I go downstairs and I knock on this lady. This is at night, it's around midnight, and I knock and I'm like, there's something wrong with this boy. I'm going back to the hospital. So I go back to the same hospital that I was in, where I was laughed at in the afternoon. Yeah. Luckily, I find another doctor. Now this doctor, he tells me, Mama, I have no idea what's wrong with your child. Nobody knows what's wrong with your child. You'll have to face it yourself. As much as people sometimes want to say it's a cruel response, I was grateful. Because for the first time, somebody was honest. Somebody was honest. And I asked him point blank, I'm like, give me a referral. I need a CT scan. Where do we go? He told me point blank, the only hospital that has a working CT scan right now is Aga Khan. Yeah. I said, give me a referral. He was like, I'm going to write your referral. I'm going to call somebody and make sure you go there. Yeah. I was grateful. Yeah. He literally told me, I have no idea I'm going to give you medicine. Just go. Mm. And I remember, actually, CT scan at that time was $700K. So that's about $300.
Yeah, $350 or something.
Yes, and he had to do quite a few, right? And I remember calling this lady and saying, hey, I have to go to Aga Khan. And she said, no, if you're taking him to Aga Khan, I cannot foot any of the bills. As if she was footing the bills at this point anyway. And I said, my son is ill. He's about to pass.
Of course it.
I hang up, I'm like, I will do everything in my power to make sure he's okay. I'll sell whatever I need to, as if I had anything to sell, but I'll sell whatever I need to sell to make sure my son is fine. Got into Aga Khan, emergency. Again, that between 2 a.m. when we were there, and 9 a.m. is when they found all these things, that he had a fracture, bruised ribs, the fractured shoulder, and his liver had fractured as well. And is he fractured?
Punctured.
He was a punctured liver. And so he had a lot of internal bleeding. And do you know the hospitals before that's what they had done whenever he was vomiting blood? They gave him medicine to stop him from vomiting.